The Mary Celeste, 1872, a ship found adrift in the Atlantic with no crew on board. Have you ever wondered what it's like to suddenly vanish? Not just to disappear for a few moments, but to leave behind everything you know, to be swallowed up by the unknown without a single trace or whisper. To drift out of the world and into legend. It's a question that has haunted sailors, storytellers, and truth-seekers for centuries. What force could cause an entire crew to step off the edge of reason, abandoning ship, and leaving only a riddle sealed in silence? Welcome to Silent Disappear. Tonight we invite you into the cold embrace of one of the ocean's deepest enigmas. Imagine the feeling a ship found eerily adrift on the fog-clad Atlantic sails, fluttering in the biting wind. Cargo untouched, personal belongings neatly stowed, everything in perfect order. Except for the crew who are nowhere to be found. No message, no bloodshed, no clue. Just an empty vessel rolling on the waves waiting to tell its chilling story. This is not a tale of pirates or storms. It's not a ghost story spun in the flickering candlelight of the supernatural, though it may as well be. What happened on that endless blue horizon in the final days before the world noticed the Mary Celeste? What compelled its captain, his devoted family, and a seasoned crew to vanish from the face of history, their fate tied forever to the salt and shadows of the Atlantic Ocean? Tonight, we begin a new chapter in our sequence of vanished stories mysteries, so profound, so wrapped in darkness, that they blur the lines between reality and nightmare. The fate of the Mary Celeste is more than a puzzle. It's a story that seeps into the cracks of reason, daring us to search for answers in the silence. Let's step back in time to the winter of 1872, a world poised between the old and the new, hemmed in by superstition and burgeoning science. It was a harsh era of bold risk and desperate hope, where ships set forth from bustling ports and faced the wild, indifferent Atlantic. The Mary Celeste was a 282-ton brigantine, sturdy and reliable, hailing from New York, a city booming with ambition, wealth, and the ceaseless noise of change. Her master captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs, was a man of faith and quiet resolve, revered for his discipline and respected by the men who served under him. But this voyage was different. His wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia joined him on the journey. An unusual choice perhaps, but not unprecedented for a captain confident in his ship and his faith. On a gray morning in November 1872, the Mary Celeste set sail from Pier 50 in New York, her hull packed with 701 barrels of industrial alcohol, bound for Genoa, Italy. The crew was lean, but experienced 7 souls in total, each with their own secrets, hopes, and reasons for seeking fortune on the open sea. The Atlantic, ever unpredictable, awaited them, a place of howling storms, sudden calms, and legends whispered between decks. The world they sailed through was a hard one. The era knew poverty and hunger, but also invention and expansion. There were whispers of unrest, stories of ships lost to tempests, and piracy of strange illnesses and unlucky omens. For transatlantic crews, fear and superstition drifted as steadily as the tides. Every man had heard tales of vessels swallowed by fog, of ghostly lights that flickered just out of sight, of ships that vanished without a trace. Yet Mary Celeste was built to survive. Her captain was seasoned, her crew well tested. By all accounts, their course was unremarkable, their cargo valuable but routine. There was nothing unusual, no reason for what would come. But somewhere in the boundless blue, as winter descended and the days grew short, something happened that would cement the Mary Celeste forever in the annals of the unexplained. On December 4th, 1872, a month after her departure, the British brigantine Dei Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste drifting erratically near the Azores, Sails partially set, the ship appeared abandoned but intact. As the boarding party approached, their footsteps echoed across empty decks. No crew on board, no signs of violence, nor struggle, nor panic. The captain's log ended abruptly. Lifeboat gone. Food stores' full personal effects left untouched. A sea-salted question mark bobbing on the ocean. What happened in the hours or days before the crew of the Mary Celeste vanished? Was it mutiny, murder, madness, or something else? Tonight on Silent Disappear, we'll descend together into the shadows of the past to try and piece together the fragments, listen to the silence between the creaks, and follow the cold trail left by the world's most infamous ghost ship. The sea never gives up its dead easily, and tonight it's time to chase what it tried to keep hidden. In the crisp dawn haze of November 1872, the busy port of New York City buzzed with commerce, yearning, and promise. Docked among the maze of sailing ships and steamboats, the Mary Celeste sat quietly at her berth, a proud American brigantine. Her white sails neatly stowed her hull, gleaming a muted black beneath the autumn sun. Originally christened the Amazon, she'd recently survived a series of misfortunes, collisions, a fire, even the death of her first captain, before acquiring her new name and reputation. Experienced sailors whispered that the Mary Celeste had a strange luck, a fate both protective and damning. At her captain's helm stood Benjamin Spooner. Briggs, a man of steadfast faith, temperate habits, and a commanding presence that inspired loyalty among sailors. At 37, with clear blue eyes and a beard trimmed with nautical precision, he portrayed calm authority. Still, there was an undercurrent of introspection in Briggs, a man who read scripture while at sea and wrote long, affectionate letters to those he left behind. The voyage would be his first as master of the Mary Celeste, and it carried unusual cargo, 1701 barrels of denatured alcohol intended for delivery in Genoa, Italy. Briggs was not alone, not this time. In a rare turn for transatlantic captains, he'd brought his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia aboard for the journey. Sarah's presence was a gentle warmth amid the masculine world of sea trade. She kept Sophia occupied with stories below deck, penning journal entries of daily life, lovingly detailing Sophia's laughter as she played in the cramped but sunlit cabin. She also maintained correspondence with her mother back in Massachusetts, providing a poignant window into shipboard life. The crew seems capable and quiet, the weather fine. Ben appears content. The crew consisted of 7 men, first mate Albert Richardson, experienced and respected, seaman Andrew Gilling, Edward William Head, and the German brothers Volkert and Boy Lawrence. Rounding out the roster was cook Edward Boz, a Dane, and steward John Pemberton. They were hired for skill and reliability, reportedly handpicked by Briggs for their attentiveness and lack of vices, a rarity among mariners of the age. In the days before departure, the Mary Celeste bustled with final preparations, barrels, loaded supplies, stowed lists checked off in Briggs' meticulous script. There was laughter and optimism, but also the weight of responsibility. New York's skyline faded into the drizzle and fog as the ship finally slipped her moorings on November 7th, 1872. The mood was calm routine, just another voyage in the endless dance of commerce. Those who glimpsed her in the Narrows that afternoon could not have imagined that the Mary Celeste was about to carve her name into maritime legend, not for heroics, but for a near unimaginable fate, vanishing souls, and a ship adrift, a mystery for the ages. The journey began as countless others, slow progress through the Narrows, a stiff November breeze crewman bustling with purpose as Captain Briggs steered a true course toward the open sea. Days melted into a rhythm. The Mary Celeste's log was kept in precise hand, past Cape Cod, wind freshening. All well. Sarah wrote home, "We are as comfortable as can be. Sophia is in great spirits, Ben remains vigilant. The crew's duty roster rotated from watch to watch as they sailed south then east into the Atlantic. But as November wore on, weather soured. Waterlogged logbooks recovered later hint at frigid squalls and thick mists. Food stores dwindled more slowly than hope. The crew soldiered on, working in unity. But there are always the cracks, small, inscrutable signs not always visible to outsiders. The cook, some later speculated, showed signs of seasickness that wouldn't abate. One hand was said to have quarreled, perhaps drunkenly, though there's no official record. Sarah surely found solace in her child's laughter, even as the ship was buffeted by fate. On November 25, 1872, Briggs' log entry at 5 a.m. cited Santa Maria Azores. The ship's position was noted as safe on course, no mention of trouble on the horizon. Around that time, Portuguese sailors glimpsed the Mary Celeste as a silhouette beyond the mists. Sails trimmed colors correct nothing amiss. It would be the last irrefutable sighting of any living soul aboard the vessel. Then, the Mary Celeste fell off the edge of human notice. Days passed then, another week. The disappearance likely transpired between November 25th and December 4th. At some point, a moment arrived a scream, or perhaps only silence. Perhaps there was a sudden panic or a calculated rushed evacuation. Perhaps someone made a fateful error. Perhaps what happened was neither impulsive nor violent, but slow, tragic, inexorable. December 4th, 1872. The Dei Gratia, a British brigantine, tacked steadily east of the Azores. First Mate Oliver Devoe squinted across the steely emptiness and spotted a vessel lurching oddly in the swells, a ship out of rhythm with the ocean sails set irregularly listing slightly. The Mary Celeste. No distress flag, no sign of life aboard. Captain David Morehouse astonished knew Briggs personally. The Mary Celeste had departed New York just days before his own ship. The crew launched a boarding party. What they found was a scene frozen in time. The deck was mostly intact, though soaked by recent storms. The ship's single lifeboat was missing. The galley's fire was out. Food was prepared but abandoned. The captain's cabin scattered with possessions, a sheathed sword atop a trunk. Sarah's needlework and her diary, Sophia's doll, tucked on her cot. The last log entry was dated 8 a.m., November 25th, 10 days before. All cargo was intact. Provisions and water enough remained for 6 more months. Of the captain, his family, and all 7 crewmen, not a soul remained. Not a single sign of violence or real struggle. Pipe racks stood empty, odd for men who rarely traveled unarmed or without their favorite vice. The only indications a raised hatch, some water in the bilges, and a loose halyard flapping mournfully. The Dei Gratia's men looked uneasily at one another, aware that the law of salvage now dictated they must bring the Mary Celeste to port. Whatever they'd found, whatever tragedy had claimed the living souls, the mystery was now theirs to carry. When the Mary Celeste limped into Gibraltar under tow, the rumor mill spun into overdrive. Newspapers in Great Britain and the United States seized upon every detail. Real or imagined ghost ship, found adrift. Entire crew vanishes without trace. The names of Captain Briggs and his family soon conjured sorrow and suspicion in equal measures. Authorities launched an official inquiry. The ship's papers, cargo, and every inch of weathered timber were examined. Salvage hearings began. Captain Morehouse and his men were questioned at length, suspicions swirling like fog. Had they murdered the crew to claim the Mary Celeste and her valuable cargo? Forensic methods were crude, but paranoia was sharp. Every smudge and scratch became potential evidence or red herring. The investigators found peculiarities. A few stains on the deck described as possibly blood that later tests suggested were not. Cut marks on the rails, signs the lifeboat was hurriedly deployed. The ship's clock had stopped, the compass smashed. Charts were scattered, but nothing indicating a mutiny or attack. The 9 barrels of alcohol had leaked, but the majority of the cargo was untouched. Testimonies from the Dei Gratia sailors grew more desperate. They recounted how the Mary Celeste rode high and awkwardly in the water, contradicting fears she might have been in danger of sinking. The cargo was worth a fortune, but unspoiled. The cabins were messy, but not violently so. Clothing, money, valuables all left behind undisturbed. Meanwhile, the Briggs and Cobb families, Sarah's kin, begged for answers. Letters poured into the New York papers. Had Ben lost his mind? Was there foul play, Sarah's sister noted. Not a day passes that we don't replay word by word her last letters. Most of the crew's relatives lived in silence, numbed by grief but hungry for truth. Public fascination escalated to obsession. Spiritualists claimed the Mary Celeste was the victim of a curse. Newspapers printed lurid illustrations, ghostly depictions of Briggs stalking the deck eyes wild, or Sarah standing at the bow searching for land she'd never see again. The ship itself became an object of dread, its eerie intactness more disturbing than any evidence of violence might have been. Weeks turned into months. The salvage hearing ended its verdict, unable to pin guilt on anyone. The Mary Celeste was cleaned, eventually sold, and quietly returned to merchant trade, now haunted by reputation and myth. The Atlantic's cold currents held its secrets. Subsequent searches for wreckage for lifeboats washed ashore for bodies, or at least some clue that might explain the ship's abandonment, all failed. No survivor, no corpse, no message in a bottle. Only silence. A century and a half later, the case file of the Mary Celeste reads like the riddles of the Sphinx, each theory more twisting than the last. In the earliest days, suspicion fell on the Dei Gratia crew. After all, they had benefited from the salvage award. Captain Morehouse was a friend of Briggs. Some posited a bizarre conspiracy in which they'd arranged for the disappearance, then split the profits. No evidence supported this theory, but its persistence speaks to the hunger for a villain. Other theories abound. Mutiny, always a favorite for the fevered mind, suggested that the crew had revolted. But why there was no violence? Valuables, money, even navigational instruments were left behind. Briggs had selected his men for their reliability. None had criminal records. Those who knew Sarah, who corresponded with her, described tranquility, not insurrection. Piracy contemporary records show no pirate attacks in the area. The cargo of undrinkable alcohol was hardly a prize. No sign of a boarding occurred. No distress signal. Some reached further, speculating on freak natural events, a sudden water spout, a rogue wave powerful enough to spook even a seasoned captain. What about the 9 barrels of leaking denatured alcohol? Could noxious fumes have filled the hold, panicking Briggs into ordering an emergency evacuation? But there were no burn marks or signs of an explosion. If an evacuation had occurred, why would an experienced seaman leave behind the ship in relatively safe condition with food and water for months? A few whispered wild tales. Sea monsters, giant squids, a curse carried since the ship's renaming. Others believed in a form of mass hysteria, maybe Briggs, influenced by religious fervor or the isolation of the ocean, lost his judgment and led his crew to doom. Still, others pointed to the weather. Storms had passed through a sudden squall, perhaps had convinced the crew that the ship was in imminent danger. But the Mary Celeste was found intact, not battered or sinking. Why would all leave taking only scant supplies? Each testimony, each clue seemed to unspool into fresh confusion. The survivors, of course, were nowhere to be found, leaving only shadows for investigators to interrogate. With time, rumor hardened into legend. Tales of ghost lights and echoing voices drifted among sailors until the Mary Celeste became less ship, more myth, a cautionary tale for those who dared the open ocean. Decades became generations. The Mary Celeste returned to sea, earning the moniker the Ship of Misfortune and suffering a series of accidents before finally sinking near Haiti in 1885, a strange epilogue befitting her legend. But for those obsessed with the original disappearance, the case was never closed. Modern investigators, marine archaeologists, forensic weather analysts, even crime novelists revisited every piece of evidence. Some breakthroughs altered perception. Others only deepened the morass. A careful analysis of the ship's construction revealed that her hold often let in water. Wet ships were not uncommon and might explain small signs of panic. But the Mary Celeste was found sound, not sinking. In 2006, weather patterns were analyzed. Barometric drops suggested sudden severe squalls or waterspouts might have caught the ship unaware. Could a deluge of water in the hold, coupled with the sharp scent of leaking ethanol, have created the illusion of imminent explosion? Did Briggs, desperate to save his family, order an emergency evacuation only to be tragically unable to return when the danger passed or the conditions changed? A modern forensic reading of the logs uncovered a twist. The final entries, written in a careful hand, betray no panic. The time between the last log entry and the ship's discovery stretches impossibly 10 days of drifting alone in busy shipping lanes. An experienced captain, a devoted father, a loving husband. What terror convinced Briggs to risk the ocean in a tiny lifeboat with wife and child? And then, in the faded correspondence of survivors' families, a glimmer of fresh horror arises. A letter overlooked by original investigators hints at cargo tampering in New York, supplies poisoned, or engine sabotage. Was there a plot against Briggs? No follow-up confirmed or denied. The final twist: a recent marine expedition using underwater drones found the scattered remains of a 19th-century lifeboat off the Azores. Tools, corroded knives, and strips of cloth tangled in the wreckage. No conclusive evidence linked it to the Mary Celeste, but for a moment, hope returned. A group of sailors lost to time, huddled for days, perished anonymously in the blind expanse of the Atlantic. Was this their silent grave? Yet despite the combined might of modern science and the old art of storytelling, the Mary Celeste guards her last secret. The fates of Benjamin Briggs, Sarah Sophia, and the 7 hand-picked crew remain lost to sea and history. Each new discovery builds the legend, even as the truth recedes like a ship vanishing silently into the fog. The Atlantic breeze still whispers the name, Mary Celeste. The year was 1872. She was a sturdy brigantine trusted by her crew, bound for Italy with a cargo of industrial alcohol and new hopes. But this vessel would never see her promised port with its human cargo intact. We've followed the facts as they unfolded. The Mary Celeste was found drifting aimlessly between the Azores and Portugal sails, billowing gently, supplies untouched and cargo largely undisturbed. The lifeboat gone. The log abruptly ended. The ship eerily intact, wet with the damp murk of something left unfinished, but curiously absent of violence or overt struggle. No signs of piracy, brutal mutiny, or storm-racked chaos. The captain's wife, a little girl, and a crew experienced in the ways of the sea all had vanished as though they'd dissolved into the mist, leaving behind only the ship's battered hull and the echo of their mysterious exodus. Speculation has risen and faded, like the tide's waterspouts, sudden storms, poisoning mutiny, foul play, or an unseen menace from the depths. Each theory remains incomplete, a puzzle missing its heart. Even now, over a century later, the Mary Celeste is less a solved mystery than a shadow haunting the annals of maritime history, refusing to yield its secret. What is it about disappearances that unsettles us so deeply? Perhaps it's because these stories reveal how easily the fabric of our reality can tear. These were people we forget that in the fog of legend. Flesh and bone, hearts and dreams. The crew had families who waited, wives who scoured the horizon, children who fell asleep hoping to hear familiar footsteps. But fate offered only silence. From the most mundane acts, raising sails, scribbling in the log, sharing a quiet meal, suddenly came absence. The daily rhythm of life interrupted in a single heartbeat that no one witnessed. In the absence of answers, our minds clawed desperately for reason. We invent storms, mutinies, even supernatural intrusions, striving for comfort in any explanation, however fantastic. But perhaps what lingers is not just the mystery, but our fear of chaos, our dread that at any moment the ordinary can shatter into the uncanny, and everything we know can vanish as if it had never been. There is a profound fragility to existence. The Mary Celeste was not sunk by cannon fire, dashed to pieces by a hurricane, or claimed by fire. She was simply left abandoned. A reminder that despite our inventions and rituals, human life is fleeting, and safety is an illusion. And what of justice? We crave answers, a culprit, a cause, some force liable for grief and loss. Yet time erodes evidence. The ocean keeps her secrets. Perhaps that's the final cruelty, the haunting possibility that not every loss can be avenged, not every wrong can be righted, and not every loved one returns. Stories like this live on because they echo our deepest doubts. If a ship of dreams could become a drifting ghost, who among us is ever truly secure? What unexplored corners of fate might wait for us just out of sight? Still we remember. We speak their names, Captain Briggs, Sarah Sophia, and all the hands who guided the Mary Celeste. We keep their story alive, holding a lantern to the unknown, defying the heavy silence that followed their last night at sea. So now, as midnight settles over the endless Atlantic and the deck of the Mary Celeste creaks beneath the memory of footsteps long vanished, we must wonder, when the sea takes what it wills and leaves behind only questions, do the vanished ever find their way home? Or do they remain forever? As phantoms on the tide, their stories searching for an ending that will never come.